Is the UFC in trouble with champions like these forward holding belts? Today, we're going to talk about some of the problems with a few of the UFC champions and if these people holding belts means trouble for the UFC. I'm Wyatt. This is Fight Society. All right, guys, so before we get into the video, please make sure to like, subscribe, become a channel member if you want some extra content, all that good YouTube stuff. Thank you very much. Back to the video. All right, guys, so I was looking at the UFC rankings in preparation for some of the videos this week and next week for UFC Paris and UFC 307. And I realized just how many boring champions we have right now, or champions that refuse to fight the actual #1 contender. So first off, we'll start off with Jon Jones, the current undisputed heavyweight champion of the UFC. Jon Jones, by the time his fight at UFC 309 at Madison Square Garden comes up in November, it will have been a year and 8 months since Jon won the belt against Ciryl Gane back at UFC, I believe 285, March of 2023. Jon in this time has stuck with the Stipe fight, which from the UFC standpoint, I understand why, they tell Stipe he's got a title fight. Stipe isn't even the one that gets hurt. And then, they can't just pull that opportunity from him once they've promised it. I know it's the fight business and they can kind of do whatever they want, but Dana is not going to let this one get pulled. So we're finally going to have this one out of the way in November, but the heavyweight division is a mess right now. I could do a separate video, and maybe I will do a separate video on the entire UFC, or just on the UFC heavyweight division and how much of a mess it is. But currently, as a part of this video, here's what I'll say. You have an undisputed champion who beat someone who wasn't even the champion. Ciryl Gane actually lost to Francis Ngannou, who was the undisputed champion, and vacated the belt when he left the organization. So some say that Jon ducked Francis until Francis left and took a much easier matchup in Ciryl Gane. And he's also ducking Tom Aspinall, who is the interim champion. As much as Dana supporters, Jon supporters, all that will say that the Stipe fight is not like ducking Tom Aspinall, or that Tom Aspinall doesn't deserve to fight Jon, anything like that, there is a point to be made. The UFC put an interim belt up for grabs between Tom Aspinall and Sergey Pavlovich. That's on the UFC. They didn't have to book a fight at all. They could have made those two guys against each other for the #1 contender. It didn't have to be for an interim belt. But what they did do is kind of, for the first time ever, create two stars in the same division. I mean, Jon was already a star, but Tom Aspinall's legend has already grown so much just with the conversation of whether or not he's ducking Jon. So my problem with Jon Jones as the heavyweight champion is that he is a heavyweight champ that will not fight the interim champion. He's cherry picking #8, which they, best heavyweight of all time, whatever. There is way better contenders for Jon Jones to fight at heavyweight. And if this is his last one and he walks away on this fight with a win over Stipe, then his legacy's tainted. He ran from Tom Aspinall. He ran from other people in the division. I'm dead serious. That's how I feel. So that's my issue with Jon Jones as champion. My next issue is with Belal Muhammad as champion. Someone that has a relatively boring style, is not the most popular. He waited for his title shot, said he's not going to be like these other champions that sit on their belt. And then right when they try to turn him around for Shavkat, he says he's not going to be ready to fight this year. Turning away #1 contenders, turning away fights, saying you won't hold up the division, and then doing that is an issue that I have with Belal. Belal is probably the least of my worries on this list, to be honest. Belal doesn't get finishes. He doesn't have a super entertaining fight style, but he's not ducking Shavkat. He's just pushing time back, stalling the division in some ways. But Belal is the least of my concerns out of these four champions I'm talking about today. Next up on the list is Merab Dvalishvili, who just beat Sean O'Malley at UFC 306, aka Noche UFC, to become the UFC Bantamweight Champion. Now, this is somebody that this is disgraceful that this is a champion, okay? Bad fight style, not fan-friendly, brutal, absolutely painful to listen to on the mic, ducking Umar, who the UFC has claimed to be the #1 guy, even though I think it should be Davison Figueiredo, and no finishes, boring fight style. 17 or 18 wins, he has 4 finishes in his career, and he's ducking the top guy, and he's terrible on the mic. And then we also have Raquel Pennington, who is a boring champion, not a very popular champion, and let me see, what does Raquel Pennington have on Instagram? Raquel Pennington is a UFC champion with barely cracking 150,000, actually not cracking 150,000 followers on IG. This was kind of like, hey, throw a belt up there because we have to move this division on from Nunes. But now they have Kayla Harrison. I don't know why they didn't just put Kayla Harrison in for a title shot off rip. They've done it before. Kai Asakura might make his UFC debut against Pantoja for the flyweight belt. They should have just put Kayla Harrison in. The reason I bring up these 4 champs right here is because I feel that we are in a little bit of a stage of nerfing of the UFC. No longer we have these big stars. We don't have Conor. I mean, even Jon Jones is such a company man now. Jon's not out here making an issue for Dana, which I'm not saying he should be out breaking the law like he has in the past, but we're in this nerfing of the UFC. You don't have a Conor type of figure. When you have these 4 champions, you have someone that is you have Jon Jones actively tearing a division apart, making the division weight, holding the division up. And then you also have Belal Muhammad, boring fight style, holding up the division in some ways. And then you have Merab ducking #1 contenders, terrible fight style, terrible on the mic. I know he's not a bad guy, but I am bummed that he is the Bantamweight champion, that he's the champion of the UFC's maybe best division right now. And then we have Raquel Pennington, who is a completely irrelevant. I mean, honestly, who cares about Raquel Pennington as a champ? We have Valentina Shevchenko, people care about her. We have Weili Zhang, people care about her. But Raquel Pennington at 135, people are so incredibly indifferent about her. And this is the problem that I think the UFC is going to have, is they're becoming so corporate with fighters being boring, not having personality, boring fight style. The way Merab fights is like almost stealing wins. You run 2 minutes off the clock, 3 minutes off the clock, get a takedown, don't do any damage, hold top control time, and then you win the fight. That's what he did to Sean O'Malley. I thought Merab won the fight, but it was a lot closer than the narrative that's out there. And so in my opinion, this video is much more of like, I came across the rankings and saw how many red flags we have as champion. It made me think about, is the UFC on a downslide because we're lacking champions that have any personality? Even the ones that don't have a ton of personality, they're still active and give us very exciting fights. Like Alex Pereira is not the most outspoken guy, but he fights every 2.5 months and he gives us highlight reel KOs. Whereas all of these 4 are not the most active and they have boring fight styles. Even Jon Jones is not the most entertaining fighter. He's very good, but he's not always entertaining. And then you have Belal boring, Merab boring, Raquel Pennington boring. Now there are ways to save these divisions. Tom Aspinall becoming champion, Shavkat or somebody like that becoming champion at 170. There's a ton of people at 135 that I'd like to see champ over Merab. And then when Kayla Harrison ends up beating Ketlin Vieira and then beating the winner of Pennington and Pena, then she's going to become champ. So this is kind of just me getting some thoughts off after seeing how many rough champions we have right now. So guys, let me know in the comments down below, do you think the UFC is headed for a downturn given the lack of personality and exciting fighters that we have as champion right now? Hey guys, thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. It really helps me out a lot. If you're interested in supporting the channel further, then become a channel member today for access to members only live streams, vlogs, and some other members perks. So click the link in the description down below or the join button on our channel homepage to become a member today. If you're interested in some non-MMA content from me, go check out my personal channel, Wyatt's World, and go check out my weekly comedy podcast, What's Up Bro, with Wyatt and Bo. Both of those are linked in the description down below. Go watch this suggested video and we'll see you next time.